When you're guilty, listen, guys, if being found not guilty when you're not guilty is the best feeling, then possibly the worst feeling has to be when you're found guilty when you're not guilty. If you're guilty, you know what I mean? You did the crime. You know what I'm saying? And as badly as you may want to be free, you can't be unburdened with like, if they say that you're guilty and you are guilty, like you actually did do it, then you just got to accept that you did a horrible deed and you're going to prison for it. You know what I'm saying? You can't be mad at the verdict. You can't be like, darn it, like they did me wrong. Like, no. Obviously you can be like, I guess you could be a bit upset at like maybe the process or like, what's it called? Like they could have been a little bit more lenient on you, I guess, depending on whatever your sentence was. But let's just say for this conversation, for this podcast specifically, if you're guilty and you're found guilty, you can't be like, oh, well, they got it wrong. You know what I'm saying? But if you're not guilty and you're found guilty, that I just want to take a little moment of silence for those that have suffered at the hands of being found guilty, but not actually guilty. So take a little break. Yeah, dude, that's I want to say that's like obviously it's a tough break. You know, it's obviously one of the worst things that can happen to you, especially when it comes to prison, when it comes to, you know, going to prison for the rest of your life. Sometimes we feel like if we got nothing to hide, like the facts wouldn't add up. You know what I mean? If we didn't do it, then we didn't do it. Simple as that. Clear as day as that. But sometimes, man, it feels like sometimes it could be just at the wrong place at the wrong time. Sometimes it could just be, well, maybe you are guilty of something, you know, like I'm not going to sit here and act like you may not sit there and be like, I'm perfectly innocent, like all the way, but I definitely didn't do this. You know what I mean? You get what I'm saying? Like, it would be like if I got away from like, let's say somebody killed somebody with a car, right? Somebody ran over a man with their car, okay? Now, I'm guilty of speeding on the road, all right? I'm a speedster, okay? I go past the speed limit, okay? I definitely think that's not the right thing to do, obviously, but I know for a fact I didn't run over this person. But my record would reflect that I got multiple speeding tickets. I have, you know, multiple conversations on the road with police officers. I get stopped, you know what I mean? Like, that's all a part of like my file, I guess, or like their overall records of me is, oh, he got stopped for a speeding ticket. He did this, he did that. It would make sense. Like they put the dots together and they're like, it makes sense that he would run over somebody going too fast or not checking the road, you know? They kind of put it in that perspective. And when they put it in that way, it's like, okay, I drive a little too fast, all right? But I didn't do this. And then they pin it all on you. And then you're found guilty when you're not guilty, right? Like, that's the kind of thing I'm talking about. It's one of those moments where it may seem like a gray area, but you know for a fact it's definitively not gray when it comes to this subject. You know what I mean? If it comes to murder, then it's kind of like, I mean, there are any number of circumstances, but in this particular instance, I'm talking about like somebody gets murdered and your DNA happens to be at the scene of the crime. So let's say like you go over to your buddy Mike's house, okay? And you hang out with Mike. And let's say by chance, a hair of yours falls out. And then, surprise, Mike gets killed, okay? He gets murdered, brutally murdered. And they find your hair at the scene of the crime. And you say, no, I didn't murder him. We were just over there for like two 2 hours or something. We played like video games or whatever. We watched a movie. We just chilled. We hung out. You know what I mean? And I didn't murder him, but you're the only person that they have DNA found at the scene that isn't people of the family. So now it just starts to, suspicion. Everybody points the finger. And it's like, I know I didn't do it, but you don't have like the facts or the full-on proof. You know what I mean? And they can somehow make up a story saying, you probably did do it. You were jealous of Mike. You didn't like Mike. You this thing with Mike or that other thing with Mike, right? Like they'll figure out a way to point the finger at you. And then you're found guilty, but you're not guilty. And then it's all, oh no, what's going on with my life? How did the system get me? What's going on? How did this happen? And I just gotta say that is a terrible, terrible feeling. It has to be. It has to be one of the worst feelings in the world. I remember I watched this movie called, oh my gosh, what's the name of it? It's the Exonerated 5 movie, the Central Park 5 kids. It was that Netflix series that they have on there. I forget what the name of it is. When They See Us, I think it's what it's called. I remember I watched that for the first time. And dude, when they got to the part where where the lawyer was basically, he was doing everything in his power, putting all the dots together, fighting for the kids, at least for one of them. I don't remember how many he represented at the time, but how he was fighting for them. And then the justice system said that they did it. And then they had to suffer going to prison, suffer going to juvenile detention, and then staying in there for such a long time, and then coming out and having to face the world in a new way. It's just increasingly difficult and almost impossible to like understand or to feel like what happens to their life now, And it takes like such a long time for them to be proven that they were not guilty, proven that they didn't do what they were accused of, and they lost a piece of their life. They lost a chunk of their life, and they'll never get that back. What do you say about that? How do you move forward from that? How do you become a man? How do you become a father? How do you become a husband? How do you move on and get over something like that? And it's like you really can't. And to anybody going through that or who's maybe in the legal process of that, it's like it may seem impossible because they already got you. And to make any kind of appeal, you'd have to find like maybe new evidence. You'd have to find something, some way to get another jury, to get another trial, to wait and wait and wait for the next time you can prove your innocence. Because you are innocent. And I don't know, I just have heavy sympathy for people in those situations. Now, people in those situations may not always be living the clean life. You know what I mean? They may steal, they may rob, they may hurt or beat, or, possibly they may have killed other people, right? Like that is totally a possibility. But within the court system, until you're not guilty until you're proven. I mean, well, I guess you're innocent until proven guilty. There we go. That's the saying. I don't know what I was talking about. You're innocent until proven guilty. Okay. Now, do I agree with murdering people? No. But I'm just saying, if you can't prove it, and if they didn't do it, and getting charged and not guilty with it, it feels like a low blow, I guess, But at the same time, I guess you could make the argument that because they did kill somebody and they already getting put into prison and they got away with it, this could be like a subtle way of quote unquote like justice for those other people, but they're not getting the real justice for the guy that they're trying to get. You know what I'm saying? I don't know. I can't help but imagine that feeling. Imagine the feeling of like, I'm speaking for myself here. If I were in that situation and knowing what I do and who I am, and thinking to myself, like, of all the things I've done in my life that I could feel guilty about, that I could have, I could feel like, I mean, not go to prison over it, but like, but just imagine, right? Like, imagine you steal something from the store, okay? Now, obviously, that's bad, you know what I'm saying? But it's not like awful, you know what I mean? I don't know. How do I put it? It's like, think of all the guilty things you've ever done. Like if being mean to your parents was a full-on crime, okay? Then it's like, okay, yes, I am guilty of that, but I don't deserve prison for it. You know what I mean? Like, all I'm trying to get at here is that when I think about all of that and then being put on trial in front of a judge and being told that, basically, even though I'm innocent, even though I feel who I am and who I am as a person, didn't do what I'm accused of, being found guilty is just like, imagine that moment. Just that time, just in that moment, in that time, in that place, in the courtroom with the judge in front of you and the prosecutor and your defense lawyer right next to you and your family sitting in the courtroom right behind you, waiting to hear a not guilty when they know and you're not guilty. And in that moment, the judge gets handed the papers from the jurors and they find you guilty. And I imagine that feeling, that sinking feeling when it's like complete dread, like your heart stops. You know how like when you get into a car accident and everything kind of slows down a little bit? I imagine it's like that, but with a more heart-sinking feeling, to be found guilty when you know you're innocent. It's cruel. It's cruel for something like that to happen. And there's a part of me that's just like, I wish that we had like a high, I wish we had a high success rate. I wish we got it right the first time, every single time. But, we're flawed. We're not perfect. Nothing's perfect. Nothing's clean. Nothing's cut perfectly. Nothing is exactly what we say it is. And sometimes real justice does get done. People who are not guilty are found not guilty. People who are guilty get sent to prison because they're guilty. Sometimes it does work. Sometimes it doesn't. Now, how often does that really happen? I don't know. But I know that it's probably more times than it probably should. More often than not, I think that the news likes to focus on stories where, certain people prevail or they maintain their innocence or that they're not guilty and say to themselves like, I didn't do it, and I've been fighting for my life ever since, behind this prison, behind these bars, behind whatever they tell me I am, They don't even give you a name anymore. You're just your inmate number. You know what I'm saying? It's always upsetting whenever I see those stories pop up, but there's a little piece of me, and this could be just like a me thing, but it's like, a little part of me is kind of like, well, if you were living a clean and straight and narrow path, you wouldn't be in the prison system. Like, you wouldn't be in this situation. You know what I'm saying? Like, I often think about like how, what I talked about last week, that A$AP Rocky situation, and I'm just like, he could have avoided this whole thing had he not been trying to intimidate his friend, or had they talked about this in private, not in a public open space, had they just simply taken it off camera or away from that, you know what I'm saying? All of that could have been easily avoided. All of that, all of the lies, all of the manipulation, all of the courtroom drama, all of the not knowing what's going to happen, all of the having Rihanna take the stand, right? Like all of that could have been easily pushed to the side or dropped or moved if he was not in that situation. It's things like that kind of make me raise my eyebrows a little bit and be like, what is he doing in this situation? Like, did he not learn his lesson doing other things, right? Like, at what point do you start going like, dude, this guy is getting into trouble because he's getting into trouble. Like, I don't know how else to put it. Like, this wouldn't be a situation if he didn't make it a situation. There wouldn't be any room for him to be lied on or for this whole legal process to be done if he was just keeping to himself and living his life, making music, doing whatever he does, you know what I'm saying? But obviously, problems come and they go, and it's all about how do you figure out what the right thing to do is, kind of all of the time. And I guess it's just a mistake, just one of those moments. But again, that's just one of those things that make you question stuff, right? It's like he's found not guilty, but like he put himself in that situation. He can't really blame anybody else for being accused of what he was accused of because he put himself in that situation. You know what I'm saying? So those are the kind of arguments that I think about whenever I see somebody like, oh, I didn't do that horrible crime. Or it's like, how did you get mixed up in that situation? Well, I was doing this other thing that was wrong. Well, it's like, do you see what I'm saying? Like, if people lived it clean, lived it good, lived it peacefully, then that problem would never have happened. But then that problem does happen, everybody gets in trouble, and then now it's a fight for your life. You know what I'm saying? I have a hard time kind of, I don't know, just sort of feeling like I guess it's more so like don't do dumb things and dumb things won't happen to you. You know what I mean? Like if you just keep it moving, be good, you don't have to worry about stuff like that. But sometimes things just happen. Sometimes you're at the wrong place at the wrong time and something bad happens and then they try to blame it all on you. But when we're talking about guilt, there are a lot of people who are guilty of bad things. There are people who are guilty of like, I don't know, maybe we shouldn't just like focus it solely on like crimes, but like kind of what I said earlier, like if you argue with your brother or with your sister, you know what I'm saying? And then you hurt their feelings, you call them a name, or your girlfriend or your boyfriend or whoever, right? You're guilty of harming somebody else. You're guilty of like hurting another person. And sometimes we hold on to that guilt. Sometimes we feel bad about those things, but we don't necessarily get charged. We don't necessarily get put in front of a judge and they tell us, hey, you're guilty of this thing, you know? And I think I talked about this last time with not guilty is like, imagine if we got put in front of a judge and they told us whether or not like an argument with your girlfriend and happened and they were like, you're not guilty, sir. Well, what if the reverse was true, right? They put us on trial and they say, you're guilty, your girlfriend's right, or your boyfriend's right, you know what I mean? I imagine that would feel like, well, damn, you know what I mean? Like, that I lost or I didn't get it, you know? I feel like in those instances, the guilt is not as heavy when it's no legal system attached to it. There's no consequences. There's no fear of, I guess, retribution or like fear of consequences. You know what I'm saying? Like, Tale as old as time. Man cheats on his girlfriend. Well, she breaks up with him. She leaves him. End of story. You know, there's no. Where are the consequences? Well, he feels guilty about what he's done. He lost a good woman. He ruined his family. He has to now split half of his earnings with his ex-wife, and da 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 da. Right? Like those are consequences, but they're not on the scale of like. And oftentimes maybe that personal guilt or personal consequence is a lot worse than possibly going to prison, possibly going to a bar with four walls, and they say that you're guilty of cheating on your girlfriend or on your boyfriend. You're going to jail for it. Like, you know what I mean? I guess it's just different. It's a different level of like, you're guilty, you get caught, and you face the consequences. And you deal with it, or you push back and you fight for your innocence. But I don't know anybody who's guilty that's like knows that they're guilty, and especially when it comes to personal, like maybe relationships, it's like, I guess it's more so of a reflex to lie, you know, because that way there's a higher chance that you can get away with it, because there is no basically courtroom to like help you out or to like go up against. It's just you and the other person, and then you have to figure out a way to like prove the evidence wrong. So let's say she got screenshots or messages of you DMing other people or doing other things that you're not supposed to be doing. Then it's like, yeah, you caught me, I did that, you know, it is what it is. Or you lie and you continuously lie and you keep digging the guilt hole even further down, and you just keep on going, no, that's not true, that's AI, that's fake, those are fake screenshots, those are fake DMs, I never did that, blah, 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 blah. You just keep on, you know what I'm saying, digging a hole for yourself. But I think what I'm trying to get at here is, when there's no threat of, I guess, lock up, or, hey, you're going to go to prison if you're guilty, if you do bad things to this person, then it kind of feels like, I don't know, what's the right word? You brush off the consequences a lot easier. You know, you take the consequences a lot easier than you would otherwise. And I don't know, I don't think that's necessarily right. I think there are a lot of people who hold on to guilt, who are not able to forgive themselves, who are not able to be forgiven by other people. And you honestly feel that sometimes you wish you kind of had the opportunity to go back and to admit to everything. Admit to everything. Stand up and say, hey, I'm guilty and I did it right. You know, I did it. I did what you're accusing me of. And I'm going to stand in front of it and I'm going to accept it. Instead of trying to fight against it or push back or to try to save what we have or what I have, what my reputation is, you know? And oftentimes, people can respect somebody who can stand up and say they're guilty. Sometimes it comes at great personal cost, you know? All of the things that I mentioned when you said that you lied, or that it's not real, or it didn't happen, or you tried to like lie to your girlfriend, to your boyfriend, or whoever, right? But then you're able to like still face those same consequences, but at least you get to be honest. At least you get the chance to say, hey, I didn't lie. You caught me. Here I am. I did that. And I'm really sorry. And I shouldn't have done it. And I did. And I accept whatever your consequences, whatever your punishment, whatever you feel is right for yourself and for me. At the end of the day, that's all you can really do. And there's a lot more respect in that. There's a lot of people who are able to say, hey, I get behind that. Like, yes, he did what was wrong, but at least he owned up to it. It's definitely a lot better than being lied to. It's definitely a lot better than feeling like, am I crazy? Am I wrong? Are you lying to me? Is this real? What can I really trust from you anymore? Because you lie, right? And I remember this one time I had band practice, okay? I was maybe in like 7th grade. I had band practice, and I was supposed to go to band practice with a friend of mine, and it was like an after-school rehearsal kind of a thing. And instead of going to band practice, me and my friend ditched, and we wanted to go explore another part of the school. So essentially the school was all one big building, and they kind of like only use half of the building. So the other half is just like empty space, open, and just whatever, There's kind of like just empty classrooms and buildings and bathrooms, and you can just kind of explore the rest of the school. And so we ditched band practice to go and do that. And then we ditched it, and then we got picked up by our parents, and then we went home, and we were like, dude, that was so cool. We ditched band practice, and we got to go hang out. But we didn't know that they were going to call our parents and tell them that we didn't show up for band practice. And they were like, well, we just picked you up from there. What were you doing? And then, you sort of lie, and you get caught in the lie, and it starts to become like this. You break your family's trust, you break your parents' trust, and you feel awful about it. And I remember I cried so hard because I was just like, darn it, I broke my mother's trust, I felt so guilty about doing what I did. And it wasn't even really that worth it. It was just an empty room. But it felt cool because we were exploring. But overall, that's like something I'm guilty of. That's something I feel guilty about doing. But had I just been honest about it, or I guess the consequences would have been heavy because like I did the wrong thing, obviously. But the fact that I lied about it, and I lied to like my mom's face, and I basically just like did the wrong thing, or I just felt like a bad kid, I felt like, darn it, why did I do that? I feel like I had heavy guilt on myself. And in the moment, I couldn't forgive myself, and I felt bad for how I like talked to my mom and stuff. But overall, if I had just been honest and open, and I was just like, listen, I wanted to hang out. I didn't really want to go to this stupid band practice thing, but I'll definitely go next time or whenever they need me to. I don't think I would have been in like that big of trouble, but it's like you add on the consequences when you do this to yourself. I don't know. How often do you get a chance at like redeeming yourself from something like that? Getting caught being guilty and being given another chance. That's the beautiful part, right? That's what prison is. It's supposed to reform you. It's supposed to give you another chance at being a good person, give you another chance at being a citizen, being somebody who can go on a new path, a better path. And very rare do people, because of the system, it feels like there's no other way for people. It feels like there's no other way to live than to be a part of that system, than to keep on balancing or facing the prison system and going against the law, When you're guilty, it's just, there's a piece of you that holds on to it. People who are able to let go of their guilt so quickly, or who don't feel guilty, People who do what they do and they have no remorse. They have no guilt over their actions or people that they hurt. Those people are they're really dangerous because they can just kind of turn off this emotion, this feeling, this like heaviness on their shoulders. They're not able to like pick it up or to carry it. They don't want to feel that burden, so they just leave it alone. They drop it. But the crazy thing about guilt or like doing bad things is that no matter if you pick it up or not, it's still gonna linger on you. You know, so you may not carry the full weight of your actions, or you may not feel guilty about them. But you're still gonna have like this stinking stench of like, oh my gosh, he's guilty. Like, do you know what I'm saying? Do you get what I'm saying? It's not a physical weight, but there still is like a lingering aroma. There is still something left on you that you can't get rid of. And I think to people like that, people who are not able to own up to their guilt, or they're not willing to accept that they've done something wrong, they're going to have to fight for themselves every single day, and it's never going to let up. There's never going to be a day where I feel like those people will never stop fighting. They'll never stop fighting for themselves. They'll never stop fighting for their actions, and those actions will eventually lead to hurting more people and hurting other people. So, when you're guilty, I want to say just own up to it. Just stand up and say, yes, I did it. And that can be really difficult sometimes. Sometimes that means you get sent to prison. Sometimes that means the worst consequence, the worst thing that you ever wanted to happen to you, happens. But at least you can say, I want to be better. I want to be good. And if that means I have to own up to it, if that means I have to be on this path, if this is the true way to reform myself or to become better, then so be it. But I think about that courtroom scene from When They See Us, and they read out the verdict. And I already know those kids are going to jail. But the fact that you see it on their faces, you see them get taken away, you see it on the lawyer's face, you see it on the family's faces. It's a feeling that never goes away. It stays with you. It's such a gut punch. And I think that fear or that feeling is something that even if you're not in that situation, you have to sympathize with, or you have to imagine that feeling, or to be afraid of that feeling. Because if you're not afraid of that feeling, or if you never expose yourself or allow yourself to feel that possibility of standing in front of a judge or being in the courtroom and being found guilty, you're not gonna want to walk the straight and narrow path. You're gonna be blind to consequences. You're gonna trick yourself into thinking that you can do anything and get away with it. I think fear is what deters us from being just the evilest people on earth. Fear is what makes us choose the straight and narrow path, the one that's the yellow brick road, I guess, the nice straight, the nice yellow path that's so bright and warm and good. I don't know. When you're guilty and you're not guilty, it takes great emotional strength to continue to stand up and say the truth, tell the truth, and let that truth guide you. If nothing else, you know in your heart that you didn't do it. And that alone should give you comfort. Of course, comfort in a prison cell, but you'll know that you didn't do it. And you can obviously still fight for yourself, as much as you can. So yeah, when you're guilty, have hope that you can change or that you can be proven innocent, I guess. And I guess every day try to do something better. So that way you don't have to feel guilty about what you choose to do anymore. Yeah. Thank you guys so much for listening. I'll talk to you guys all next time. Thank you.